Okay, guys, it's time for our reading again. Reminder, Gods of the Bible is the book that we're reading from. And the last chapter was 8, and it was the birth of monotheism. And in the beginning was polytheism, because there was a worship of gods prior to, even way before Yahweh came on the scene. In this particular chapter, we discussed it wasn't always monotheism, but there was polytheism as well, male and female gods. And we sort of discussed Yahweh. When Abraham first speaks to Yahweh, Yahweh speaks about himself, and on and on. Now we're down to chapter 9, the people of property. And the first subheading is chosen people. All right, this should be very interesting. All right. The concept of chosen people is exceptionally delicate. It lends itself to instrumental readings that, unfortunately, are sometimes used to justify racist positions on both sides, with all the tragic consequences that history has shown us. A careful analysis of the origins of this concept can lead to the diffusion of the waiting bomb, which has more or less devastating effects depending on the moment in which its detonation occurs. As often the case, the truth sets one free and removes the very foundations on which contradictions and falsifications lie. Let us first see how a part of Jewish thought represents this concept. From this Jewish perspective, the Christian church has claimed to take the place of the Israelites as the chosen people, inventing human doctrines and erroneous interpretations and denying the Jewish roots of this idea. Met with this problem, the church theorized and postulated a distinction between a physical Israel and a spiritual Israel, i.e., the church itself, which would become the final and sole recipient of the promises made to the Israelites in the Bible. Jews rightly emphasize that the solution to this problem is to be sought exclusively in the scriptures of the Old Testament, which speak unequivocally of a single chosen people composed of two distinct entities, the house of Judah and the house of Israel, the only ones legitimized to constitute the assembly of Israel. As can be seen, it takes work to settle this question. The hypothesis pursued in this book can shed some light and explain that the choice of one people is far less edifying than is commonly believed. Lofty goals of religious and spiritual kinds were indeed not the reason for the motives behind this choice or selection. The existence of various Elohim who fought for control of territories in the so-called Fertile Crescent constitutes the foundation of our working hypotheses. Now, when and how does this choice or selection take place? Scholars need to look into a passage in Deuteronomy 32 that is important for understanding the context in which the alleged election of the chosen people took place. Deuteronomy 32 is critical for understanding who does what. In this section, we find the so-called Song of Moses, which celebrates the greatness of Yahweh and praises his works, recalling all that Yahweh has accomplished and what he did for Israel. However, Deuteronomy 32 shows an assortment of characters that traditional monotheistic views aim to simplify and overlook while trying to reduce to one what is, in reality, manifold. In this section, God is referred to by the term Yahweh, often accompanied by an attribute identifying him as a specific member of the ranks of the Elohim. Elohinu, our Lord, that is, the one of the Elohim who is ours. Yahweh is also called El or Eloha, which denotes in the singular one of the members of the group of the Elohim, as shown in chapter 2. However, the reader will note at some point a switch in the narrative. The subject changes. God is no longer called Yahweh. Moses abandons all other definitions and resorts to a different term, Elyon, which means high, higher, superior, the one above. This term defines a clear hierarchical position, Deuteronomy 32:8. And here's the Hebrew words with the English translation underneath. When make inherit Elyon nations. When separate he children of Adam. Establish borders of peoples. For based on number of children of Israel. The first part of the verse clearly states that Elyon, the one above, considers all the peoples, nations, as an inheritance, a property to be distributed. All nations before him are a set of goods, peoples, that we can rightly assume he possesses, on which he exerts his unlimited power, and about which he is free to decide their future, including the decision to assign them to someone as personal property. Who then is Elyon? The next subtopic is Elyon. The term Elyon is often used in the Bible as an adjective meaning someone or something that is above, high above, superior. There are several examples of this use in this specific meaning. In Ezekiel 41, verse 7, the term denotes the upper Elyon story of the house. In Joshua 16:5, in 1 Chronicles 7:24, and 2 Chronicles 8:5, it denotes a border city, Bet-Oron, divided into an upper Elyon and a lower part. Isaiah 36:2 refers to a pool called Elyana, superior. In Deuteronomy 26:19, the definition of superior is also evident. In this passage, the term Elyon is used to define the nation of Israel, which is superior in fame, name, and honor to other nations. So Elyon is not the identifying name of a person, a proper name, but a term denoting a position, a function, or a quality. With this in mind, we return to Deuteronomy 32. The assignment of the inheritance by the he who is above, eventually results in a division of nations among the different Elohim, 32:9. Yahweh also gets his little share. Hebrew to English translation, it says, that portion of Yahweh, people his, Jacob rope, territory of inheritance his. The term cheval means rope and indicates, by extension, a portion of territory measured with a rope. This expression is very eloquent and shows that the biblical authors refer to precise geographical areas defined by clear boundaries. We are dealing with the actual territorial division, the definition and establishment of spheres, and influence over certain nations and peoples by certain individuals. Notably, the people descended from Jacob became Yahweh's inheritance after the division was made by Elyon, the one above. Moses says that Yahweh, Deuteronomy 32:10, Hebrew to English translation, finds him in land deserted and in absence of structure, howling desolation, desert, surrounds he, looks after him, protects him, the apple of his eye. Yahweh by himself leads him, and not with him El Foreign. This is a crucial statement. No other El was with Yahweh. The El named Yahweh, says the Bible, took care of Jacob's family alone. He had no help from his colleagues, neither did he seek it, as far as we know. We ask ourselves, why was it necessary to emphasize this particular aspect? We clarify a point that can only cause confusion in a monotheistic narrative. Why claim that Yahweh was alone if no other gods existed? And yet, as strange as it sounds, this passage is in full accordance with many other passages from the Bible in which, with unmistakable clarity, there is evidence of the existence of other gods and foreign gods. As seen in the previous chapters, the Bible often tells us the names of Yahweh's colleagues, the other Elohim: Shamush, Elohim of the Moabites; Milcom, Elohim of the Ammonites; Hadad, Elohim of the Arameans; Melkort, Elohim of the Tyrians, and many more. Extra-biblical literature also confirms this reading. Plato mentions a territorial division among the so-called gods in his dialogue, Kritas. As we shall see, Sumerian accounts also describe this episode in great detail. We have various sources of different cultural origins that confirm the biblical episode of Deuteronomy 32 and its reading in a non-monotheistic light. Driven by these gods coming from above, each recipient of a limited jurisdiction over one people, territory, human civilization spread across the planet. Yahweh received Jacob's family, but other Elohim inherited other lands and nations. Israel was the property of Yahweh. The expression Sagula, that the Bible uses in this section indicates precisely a personal property and effectively conveys the idea we have described. Deuteronomy 7, verse 6 reiterates this concept by restating that Israel is Sagula, property of Yahweh. Israel is also Kadosh, that is consecrated to him, which means exclusively reserved for him, as we have already explained in the previous chapters when discussing the word sacred. Sumerian literary accounts also confirm the biblical passage of Deuteronomy 32. In fact, with all likelihood, the biblical account derives from the Sumerian tablets. The Bible provides a concise form of what the Sumerians explained in length. Sumerologists know this Sumerian narrative as Enki and the world order. In this story, the Anunnaki commander Enki defines the world's destinies by arranging the partition of power among the lesser Anunnaki, the ones below him. This division is described in a remarkably detailed manner. Enki is superior to all others. He has the power to determine the destinies of different lands and territories, which are named in succession: Sumer, Maluha, Delmun, Elam, Marhashi, Martu, Tigris, Euphrates, the marshy region, and the sea. The supreme leader established what we would call today a new world order. Enki also distributes privileges and responsibilities to the individual Anunnaki under him. He assigns to the lesser gods the development of various activities that constitute the basis of human civilization: agriculture, animal husbandry, weaving, building, and so on. The Sumerians were so accurate in describing these events that they did not forget to mention the less edifying aspects of the behavior of these so-called gods. The minor gods were often dissatisfied with the assigned task. They quarreled about responsibilities and complained that Enki excluded them from the land distribution. This behavior is not surprising, given their human-like nature. Among the various places and lands that the Sumerian texts mention, one cannot overlook Mahulaha, traditionally located by scholars between Iran and Afghanistan. Some scholars identify Mahulaha, Melukhaka, as the southernmost part of the Harappa civilization. Together with Mohenjo-Daro, this city represents essential evidence of the unique Vedic Indo-Aryan culture that developed along the banks of the Indus River to the shores of the Arabian Sea in the 4th-3rd millennia BCE. Other precise indications in the cuneiform texts attest to the vastness of the geographical area involved in the territorial division. One additional point of contact with the Bible is that in that the Dravidian people who inhabited these lands traced their origin to Manu, the Hindu equivalent of the biblical Noah, who repopulated the earth after the flood. In summary, the Sumerian accounts described in detail what the biblical briefly summarizes in Deuteronomy 32. The story is the same. One great leader, the one above, distributes land and assigns responsibilities to the other minor gods below him. Some are happy, some are not. During this distribution, Yahweh received one tiny nation, Israel. Was Yahweh happy with his assignment? Did he expect more? Whatever the case, the Bible informs us that Yahweh was alone. No other God was to help him with his task and duties. It must also be emphasized that Israel was not chosen by, but rather assigned to Yahweh. Other people's nations were assigned to other gods, and thus constituted material for different choices within which it is presumptuous to define a hierarchical scale. Now suppose we can free ourselves from the conditioning of 2,000 years of theology and centuries of religious doctrine and look at the situation from a distance. We clearly understand that the very idea of Israel being the chosen people is the child of a monotheistic conviction that has matured over the centuries and has eventually made Yahweh the one God. This monotheistic development first took place in the Hebrew realm and was then reshaped, revised, and reconstructed by the numerous theological movements in the Christian and Islamic worlds. When we look at the history of the concept of the chosen people, we see how it changes diachronically, and the great degree of variation it exhibits over time, from the initial selections and assignments of Elyon in Deuteronomy 32 to modern sectarian and fanatical manifestations often found in monotheistic religions. To summarize, each Elohim had their inheritance, and their chosen people. All the ancient chronicles, including the Bible, tell us in great detail that these gods were never satisfied with their endowments, but were in constant struggle with each other to expand their dominions and spheres and influence. So there were many gods with their respective chosen people. Hold on. My fingers are not working. Okay, just a couple more paragraphs for this subtitle. Several questions arise from these considerations. How can one determine a value scale of the different chosen peoples? How can one say that Yahweh of Teman, the Lord of the South, i.e., Palestine, was superior to Baal, Zaphon, the Lord of the North, i.e., Lebanon, or Ashur, or Marduk, the other gods who ruled over Assyrian and Babylonian territories? And what about the gods who ruled over territories in the Far East or the American continent? Wow. I knew this was going to be a good one. I'm going to go ahead and stop here on this particular page. We're going to start again on page 164, the sign of the choice. Wow. Again, this is going to really upset some folks, especially those who consider themselves the chosen people. And I remember doing a video a few years back. What if the God that you've been serving or attempting to serve and have faith in and pray to and is actually not who you think it is? And I'm thinking about the Israelite folks, the Jewish folks who consider themselves the chosen ones. You are, wherever you are, and just from reading this, wherever you are, if you are in Asia someplace with that clan of people or that region of the world that was assigned to that particular Elohim, you are the chosen people for that land. In the Americas, and that's a whole other story, because I think it was actually people of color, Negro people were in the Americas before the Native American that we picture in our minds, with the straight hair, the red skin, and the high cheekbones. There were Negro people here in the Americas before Columbus. That's going to come out too. But what I'm saying is, no matter where in the world, whatever Elohim was awarded this land or was given this particular parcel of land or one part of the earth or whatever, each of those different divisions of the world were their chosen people. So it's a whole bunch of chosen people. How about that? It's not just one or two. It is whoever the Elohim was that was ruling or that particular part of the land, you were his or hers chosen people. So everybody's chosen. How's that? Anyway, we're going to start again. Like I said, hold on. Did I lose it? Yeah, I did lose it. Let me go back and make sure I tell you guys exactly where to start again. I did tell you, but I'm going to tell you again because I need to tell myself. No foreign Elyon. I don't see where it is. But anyway, I already told you, just back up the tape and tell you where we're going to start next time. I'll see you guys later. Woohoo!